I still remember the exact sound his laugh made in that courtroom. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was wet, smug, victorious. Like a man who'd just kicked a puppy and discovered the puppy was stuffed with cash. The judge hadn't even finished reading the ruling before my brother Ethan threw his head back and let it rip. The sound bounced off those oak-paneled walls and landed right in my chest like a fist. He turned to me, eyes shining with tears of pure joy, and mouthed the words, "Told you, little sister, you never had a chance." $50 million. Our father's entire empire, built from nothing in a one-room apartment above a laundromat in Queens, handed over to the son who'd spent the last 15 years snorting it up his nose and sleeping with anything that moved. And I got nothing, not 1 cent. Not even the little beach house in Cape Cod where Dad taught me to sail when I was 7. The one he promised would always be mine. Ethan leaned over to his slimeball lawyer, still chuckling, and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Looks like community college and waitressing didn't teach her how to read a will, huh?" The bailiff didn't stop him. The judge didn't look up. My own lawyer, some overworked public defender type I could barely afford, just stared at his shoes like they were the most interesting thing in the world. I sat there in my one decent black dress from Macy's, the one with the loose thread at the hem I couldn't afford to fix, hands folded in my lap so no one would see them shaking. My nails were still stained from the dinner shift I'd worked the night before, scrubbing grease from under them in a gas station bathroom at 2 a.m., and I smiled, because there was something my brother didn't know, something no one in that room knew, something I'd been hiding for 18 months while I let him parade around Manhattan with his Russian model girlfriend, selling off our family's memories for Instagram likes and champagne toasts. I had a witness, not just any witness, the one person who'd been there the night Ethan forged that will, the woman he'd threatened, bribed, and tried to make disappear, the woman who knew exactly what my father really wanted, what he'd actually written in his own shaking handwriting 3 months before he died. And in exactly 9 minutes, she was going to walk through that courtroom door and burn his entire world down. If you've ever been betrayed by family, if you've ever been told you're not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear is how patience, strategy, and one hell of a hidden witness can flip everything. And I mean everything. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because if you're going to understand why I didn't just roll over and die that day, you need to know exactly who my brother became and who I had to become to destroy him. My father, Victor Russo, was old-school Italian in every sense that mattered. The kind of man who kept a rolled-up newspaper in his fist when he was angry and a rosary in his pocket when he was scared. He came from nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing. His mother, Nonna Russo, arrived at Ellis Island in 1952 with a cardboard suitcase, $3, and a recipe for Sunday gravy that would later feed half of Queens. Dad started with one deli, one tiny cramped shop on the corner of 47th and Broadway that smelled like mortadella and broken dreams. He was 19 years old, working 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot in the back room because he couldn't afford an apartment. Within 5 years, he had 3 locations. Within 10, he had a distribution network. By the time I was born, he'd built a private label brand that ended up in every Costco from Maine to California. $700 million. That's what the empire was worth when he died, but money never changed him. Not with me, anyway. He called me La Sua Principessa, his princess, even when I had engine grease under my nails from helping him fix the delivery trucks. Even when I showed up to family dinners in ripped jeans and a Yankees cap, smelling like the warehouse where I'd spent all afternoon learning to drive the forklift. I was 12 years old the first time he let me operate that thing, and I nearly knocked over an entire pallet of San Marzano tomatoes. He just laughed, ruffled my hair, and said, "Again, Principessa, you learn by doing." Every summer, just the two of us, we'd drive up to the beach house in Cape Cod. It wasn't fancy. Weathered blue shutters, a porch that creaked when you walked on it, sand that got into absolutely everything, but it was ours. Dad would cook clams in a battered aluminum pot on the porch while the sun set over the water, telling me stories about Nana and the old country. He taught me to sail in a dinged-up sunfish he'd bought at a yard sale for $300. We'd stay out on the water for hours, just drifting, and he'd talk to me like I was a person, not a kid, about business, about life, about how to tell the difference between people who wanted something from you and people who just wanted you. "Remember, Elena," he'd say, squinting against the sun, "blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does." Ethan hated those trips. My brother was 10 years older than me, already a teenager by the time I came along. An accident, Mom used to joke, though she never made it sound like I was unwanted. Ethan, though, he made it clear from day one that I was an inconvenience, a distraction, someone stealing Dad's attention that rightfully belonged to him. He wanted penthouses and bottle service, not sand in his shoes and clam chowder made from scratch. When Dad tried to bring him to the warehouse, teach him the business, Ethan would show up late, complain about the smell, and leave early to meet friends in the city. When Dad invited him to Cape Cod, Ethan would make excuses. Summer internships that never materialized. Trips with friends that always seemed more important than family. Dad tried. God, he tried. But the more he pushed, the further Ethan pulled away. And the further Ethan pulled, the closer Dad held me. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Dad saw something in Ethan that scared him. A hunger that couldn't be satisfied. A greed that didn't know when to stop. But with me, I was his second chance. His do-over. The kid who actually wanted to learn the business. Who asked questions about supply chains and profit margins instead of just asking for money. I was his principessa, and Ethan never forgave me for it. The call came on a Tuesday. I was in Colorado 3 months into my master's program in forensic accounting at the University of Denver. I'd chosen forensics specifically because Dad had taught me to look for patterns, to follow the money, to understand that numbers never lie even when people do. I was standing in line at a campus Starbucks arguing with my advisor over email about my thesis proposal when my phone buzzed. Dad's voice was quiet, too quiet. "Principessa, I need you to sit down. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. 6 months, maybe less if the treatment didn't work. The doctors had found it late, too late, because Dad, being Dad, had ignored the symptoms for months. The back pain, the weight loss, the yellowing skin he'd blamed on too much stress, not enough sun. "I'm coming home," I said immediately. No, you finish your—" "Dad, I'm coming home." I dropped everything. Withdrew from classes, broke my lease, packed my entire life into the back of my Honda Civic, and drove 28 hours straight back to New York, stopping only for gas and terrible coffee. I moved into the house, into my old childhood bedroom with the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling, and I didn't leave. For 4 months, I slept in the recliner next to Dad's hospital bed, which we'd set up in the living room because he refused to die in some sterile facility. I learned to change IV bags, crush pills, measure morphine doses. I held his hand through the pain that made him cry, this man who'd never cried in front of me, not once, and I read to him from the newspaper when he couldn't sleep. That's when Ethan showed up. Suddenly, after years of being too busy to visit for holidays, my brother appeared, and he came dressed for success. Tom Ford suits that probably cost more than my tuition, shoes so shiny you could see your reflection, cologne that smelled like money and desperation. He brought Dad's soups from Nobu, read him the stock pages, sat in the good chair, my chair where I'd spent every night for weeks, and talked about the business like he'd ever cared about it before, like he hadn't spent the last decade treating Dad's empire as nothing more than a personal ATM. "Don't worry, Pop," Ethan would say, all smooth concern and fake warmth. "I've got everything under control. You just rest. Focus on getting better." But Dad wasn't getting better. The morphine doses increased. The lucid moments became fewer. And Ethan? He started staying later, arriving earlier. Always when I was out getting groceries or picking up prescriptions. Always finding reasons to be alone with Dad. I should have known something was wrong. The worst part? There were moments when I actually believed Ethan had changed, when I thought maybe, finally, he was stepping up, being the son Dad always wanted him to be. I was so stupid. The night Dad died, I was there, holding his hand. His skin was paper thin, almost translucent, and his breathing had that awful rattle that meant the end was close. He opened his eyes, really looked at me, and squeezed my hand so hard I thought he'd break it. "I'm proud of you, Principessa," he whispered. "You're the best thing I ever made." Then he was gone. Ethan, he was in Ibiza, posted a photo on Instagram at 3 a.m. our time, shirtless on some yacht, surrounded by models in bikinis, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon. The caption read, "Life's short, live it up." I called him 17 times. He texted back 6 hours later. "Sorry, bad reception, on my way." He flew in for the funeral wearing sunglasses indoors and a tan that probably cost more than most people's cars. He hugged me at the wake, and I could smell the Ibiza still on him. Coconut sunscreen and expensive tequila, and the perfume of whatever girl he'd brought back on the plane. "Sorry I couldn't make it sooner," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "You know how it is." I didn't know, but I was about to learn. 3 weeks later, the will was read. And that's when my brother finally showed me who he really was. The lawyer's office was wrong from the start. It wasn't Mr. Moretti's wood-paneled sanctuary on the Upper East Side where Dad had done business for 30 years. It was some sleek glass tower in Midtown, all chrome and cold marble, the kind of place that charged you just for breathing the air. The receptionist was too young, too blonde, too polished. Everything felt sterile, corporate, wrong. And the lawyer himself, some guy named Davidson who I'd never seen before, never heard Dad mention once, had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, the kind salesmen use right before they screw you. "Where's Mr. Moretti?" I asked as we sat down. Davidson's smile flickered. "Mr. Moretti retired last year. Your father transferred his affairs to our firm." Ethan, sitting across from me in yet another expensive suit, didn't even look up from his phone. "Yeah, I helped Dad with that. Moretti was getting senile, forgetting shit. We needed someone sharp." Something in my stomach twisted, but I didn't say anything. What could I say? Dad had been so sick those last months. Maybe he had made changes. Maybe I'd missed it. Davidson opened a leather folder, expensive, embossed, the kind of theatrical bullshit that should have been my second warning, and cleared his throat like he was about to announce lottery numbers. The last will and testament of Victor Anthony Russo, dated March 15th, 2023. 3 months before Dad died. Right in the middle of the worst of it, when the morphine had him so confused he sometimes forgot my name. Davidson read in that flat lawyer monotone, "To my son, Ethan Victor Russo, I leave my entire estate, real property, liquid assets, business holdings, and personal effects, in recognition of his commitment to continuing the family legacy. The estate, totaling approximately $50 million after taxes and—" The words kept coming, but I'd stopped hearing them. 50 million, everything, the business, the properties, the investments. I waited for my name, kept waiting. Davidson droned on about tax implications and probate procedures and trustee appointments, and still nothing. Finally, near the end, "To my daughter, Elena Marie Russo, I leave my love and the hope that she finds her own way in the world." That was it. Not the beach house, not a trust fund, not even a small percentage of the business I'd spent my childhood learning to love. Just hope and love. I looked at Ethan. He was grinning. Actually grinning like he'd just won the Super Bowl and the lottery on the same day. He leaned over close enough that I could smell his overpriced cologne and whispered, "Guess Dad finally figured out who the real heir was, huh? Who actually deserves it." The room tilted. My vision went spotty at the edges. "Elena, are you all right?" Davidson asked, but he didn't sound concerned. He sounded like he was reading from a script, like he'd expected this reaction. I need, my voice cracked, bathroom. I walked, not ran, to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the faucet so no one would hear, and then I threw up until there was nothing left but bile and betrayal. This was wrong. All of it. Dad wouldn't do this. He'd promised. The beach house was mine. He'd said so 1,000 times. That house is yours, Principessa. When I'm gone, you'll have it. You and your kids. It's family. But the will, the official, legal, notarized will, said otherwise. I splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My cheap black dress, the one I'd bought at Target for $39.99 because I'd spent the last of my savings on Dad's medical bills, looked even cheaper under the fluorescent lights. Ethan had won. I couldn't go home. Not to the house that was now Ethan's house, not to the memories that he'd just bought and paid for. So I went to Dad's office, the one place in the house that still smelled like him. Leather and cigars and the faint chemical tang of the label-making ink from the warehouse. Ethan hadn't touched it yet, probably didn't even know half of what was in here. I started with the desk, then the filing cabinets, then the closet where Dad kept his important papers, the stuff he didn't trust to lawyers or accountants, the things he wanted to keep close. 3 hours later, my hands shaking, covered in dust, I found it. Hidden in the false bottom of Dad's cigar box, the fancy one he'd bought himself for his 60th birthday, was a flash drive. And on that flash drive, a second will, dated June 20th, 2023, 3 months after the one Davidson had read. Signed, witnessed, notarized. I opened it with trembling hands, and the words blurred through my tears. To my daughter, Elena Marie Russo, I leave my entire estate. Everything. The business, the properties, the beach house, everything. At the bottom, in Dad's shaky handwriting, the writing from his final weeks, when his hands barely worked, was a notepaper clip to the printed will. Ethan has taken enough. This is for my Principessa. Protect her. VR. The witnesses listed, Maria Delgado and James Chen. James Chen had died 2 months ago, heart attack, and Maria Delgado, Dad's private nurse, the woman who'd been with him 24/7 those last months, had been fired by Ethan the day after the funeral, paid off, threatened, disappeared. I sat there on the floor of Dad's office, surrounded by his things, holding proof that my brother hadn't just stolen my inheritance. He'd forged a will, erased witnesses, destroyed evidence. This wasn't grief. This wasn't about Dad choosing favorites. This was theft. And somewhere out there, Maria Delgado knew the truth. I just had to find her. 3 days after the funeral, I sat in my car in the cemetery parking lot, staring at Dad's grave from a distance. I couldn't bring myself to get closer. Not yet. Not with all the flowers Ethan had paid for. Those ridiculous arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly rent, all for show, all for the Instagram photos he'd posted with captions about honoring family and carrying on the legacy. The hypocrisy made me want to scream. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting calls from reporters, distant relatives I'd never met, financial advisors who'd somehow gotten my number and wanted to discuss my options. But something made me pick up. Miss Elena? The voice was trembling, heavily accented, barely above a whisper. It's Maria. Maria Delgado. I sat up so fast I hit my head on the car roof. Maria, where are you? Ethan said he'd paid you severance and you'd gone back to... He lied. Her voice cracked. Miss Elena, your father. He made me promise. If anything happened, if Ethan tried to take everything, I was to find you. My hands started shaking. What do you mean? I need to tell you something, but not on the phone. Can you meet me? We met at a diner in Yonkers, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed during the Carter administration. Maria looked different. Thinner, scared, constantly glancing at the door like she expected someone to burst in. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside, the real will. And something else, a tiny SD card. Your father knew, Maria said, tears streaming down her face. He knew what Ethan was planning. The story came out in pieces. Between sips of coffee and nervous glances, Ethan had come to Dad's room at 2 a.m., 4 days before Dad died. He thought Dad was unconscious, deep in a morphine haze, but Dad had skipped his evening dose, stayed lucid, waited. Maria had been in the bathroom cleaning up when she heard voices. She cracked the door and saw Ethan standing over Dad's bed, holding papers. "Just sign here, Pop," Ethan had said, his voice smooth, practiced. "It's just updating some accounts, making things easier for when it's time." Dad had looked right at the nanny cam, the one he'd installed months earlier because he didn't trust Ethan, the one hidden in the smoke detector that Ethan had never noticed, and winked. Then he'd pretended to sign the fake will with a trembling hand. Ethan had kissed his forehead, actually kissed it. "Thanks, Pop. You rest now. I'll take care of everything." The moment Ethan left, Dad had turned to Maria. His voice was weak but clear. "Get out. Take the real one. Protect my little girl." Maria had grabbed the will from its hiding place, the SD card from the camera, and Dad's medical records, the real ones, showing his lucidity charts, proving he'd been sharp enough to make decisions. "He threatened me, Miss Elena," Maria whispered. "The day after the funeral, Mr. Ethan found me packing. He said if I ever spoke to you, if I ever told anyone what I saw, he'd have my mother deported back to Honduras. She's been here 40 years, but her papers, they're complicated. He said he knew people, that he could make her disappear." "Where is she now?" "I sent her to my cousin in Texas, far away, safe." Maria gripped my hand across the table. "Your father was a good man. He loved you so much. He talked about you all the time, said you were the only one who got it, who understood what he built, what it meant." I looked at the envelope, the proof, the truth, and I realized something. Ethan thought he'd won. He thought he'd erased Maria, silenced the witnesses, destroyed all the evidence. But he'd forgotten the most important rule Dad had ever taught me. Never underestimate someone who's got nothing left to lose. "Maria," I said slowly, an idea forming, "how would you feel about disappearing for a while? Really disappearing?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we let Ethan think he got away with it? Let him get comfortable, sloppy. While we build an airtight case he'll never see coming." For the first time since I'd sat down, Maria smiled. "Your father said you were smart. He said, 'My Elena, she thinks like a chess player, always 5 moves ahead.'" "Then let's play." We spent the next 3 hours planning. I'd move Maria somewhere safe, somewhere Ethan would never find her. I'd pay her in cash, keep her off the grid, and I'd wait, build the case, document everything. Because Ethan wanted me broken, I'd show him broken. I'd be so broken, so defeated, so completely destroyed that he'd never see it coming. And then, when he least expected it, when he was at his highest, his most arrogant, his most invincible, I'd burn his entire world down. "How long?" Maria asked. "As long as it takes." I met her eyes. "Are you in?" She nodded. "For your father. For you, I'm in." We shook hands across that sticky diner table, 2 women nobody would bet on, planning the kind of revenge that takes patience, the kind that actually works. The studio apartment in Jersey City cost $1,200 a month and smelled like old curry, broken dreams, and something that might have been a dead rat in the walls. The previous tenant had left stains on the carpet that I didn't want to identify. The shower had 2 temperatures, ice cold and lava hot. The windows overlooked a parking lot where car alarms went off like a nightly symphony. It was perfect, because Elena Russo, daughter of a multi-millionaire, would never live here. But Lena? Lena the waitress? Lena who'd gotten nothing from her family, who'd been written out of the will, who was clearly too stupid and weak to fight back. She'd live exactly here. I bought all my clothes from Goodwill. Learned to wear my hair in a messy bun that looked like I'd given up, rather than like I didn't have time. Stopped wearing the little gold necklace Dad had given me for my 18th birthday. Too expensive, too recognizable. Started wearing a knockoff silver chain from Claire's that turned my neck green. The diner was called Mel's. Original, I know. And the owner was a guy named Tony who'd worked in one of Dad's warehouses 20 years ago. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? The last time he'd seen me, I was 12 years old and following Dad around asking questions about logistics. "You got experience?" Tony asked, looking at my application with the kind of skepticism that comes from hiring too many people who quit after one shift. 2 years at a place in Colorado, I lied smoothly. References died in a fire. He hired me on the spot. Minimum wage plus tips, doubles when I wanted them, which was always because staying busy meant not thinking about what I'd lost. The name tag they gave me said Lena, because the woman who made them couldn't spell Elena right and I didn't correct her. Let Lena be someone else, someone forgettable, someone who didn't matter. My first shift, I dropped a tray of plates. The crash echoed through the diner and everyone stared. Old Elena would have been mortified. Lena just cleaned it up and kept going. My second week, a businessman in an expensive suit snapped his fingers at me like I was a dog. "Coffee, black, and make it fast, sweetheart." Old Elena would have dumped it in his lap. Lena smiled and said, "Of course, sir, right away." The discipline was the hardest part. Every time I wanted to snap back, I'd think about Ethan. About the long game. About Dad's voice. "Patience, Principessa. The best revenge is the one they never see coming." Maria was safely tucked away in a cabin outside Burlington, Vermont. I'd paid 6 months' rent in cash, set her up with a prepaid phone, visited once a month, always making sure I wasn't followed, always paying in cash for everything, leaving no digital trail. We'd go through the evidence together. The real will, the medical records, the video from the nanny cam that showed Dad, lucid, aware, playing Ethan like a fiddle. "He was so smart," Maria would say, shaking her head. "Even when he was dying, he was protecting you." Every month, I'd hand her an envelope of cash. My savings were dwindling fast, but it didn't matter. This was an investment, in justice. From Vermont, I'd drive the 4 hours back to Jersey City, back to the studio apartment, back to Mel's Diner, where I'd smile at rude customers and pretend my feet didn't hurt and count tips that barely covered my rent. And every night, I'd lie awake on my lumpy mattress, listening to the car alarms and the arguments through thin walls, and I'd watch Ethan's Instagram, because that's what broke people do, right? They watch their successful siblings on social media and feel jealous, feel small, feel like failures. That's what Ethan would expect, so that's what I gave him. I even liked a few posts, left a comment once. "So happy for you," with enough exclamation points to look desperate. Ethan sent me a DM the next day. "Thanks, sis. Sorry things didn't work out for you. Dad must have had his reasons, you know?" I stared at that message for 10 minutes. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. Then I typed back, "Yeah, I understand. Congratulations on everything." And I smiled. Because every message, every post, every humiliation was making him cockier, sloppier, more convinced that I was broken, which was exactly what I needed. By month 3, I'd perfected the act, the shuffle walk of someone defeated, the apologetic smile of someone who knows their place, the downcast eyes of someone who's given up. I'd become a ghost. Not invisible, that would have been suspicious, but forgettable. Insignificant, someone you'd glance at and immediately dismiss. "That poor girl," I heard Tony say to one of the cooks. "Her whole family cut her off. Can you believe that? Her own father." Perfect. Let them think I was pathetic. Let them think I was broken. Let them all underestimate me. Because I was learning something Dad had tried to teach me years ago. The most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody's watching, and nobody watches the help. Ethan announced his engagement 3 months after Dad died. Instagram, of course. A professional photo shoot on some beach in Santorini, her hand stretched out to show off a ring that probably cost more than my car. Both of them laughing in that fake way people do when photographers tell them to act natural. Her name was Svetlana Volkov, Russian. 26, model, influencer, whatever term applied to women who got paid to look beautiful and post about teeth-whitening products. The caption, "She said yes. Can't wait to spend forever with my queen. Dad would have loved her. Blessed Devaka New Beginnings." I was on my break at the diner when I saw it, eating a stale turkey sandwich in the parking lot. I stared at that post for so long my phone screen dimmed. Dad would have hated her. He would have seen right through the Instagram filter and the practice smile and the way she posed like everything was a photo op. He would have taken one look at those cold blue eyes and known exactly what she was, a gold digger with good bone structure. But Ethan? Ethan thought he'd found a prize. They got married 2 months later. Small ceremony, which in Ethan speak meant only 200 people at a venue in the Hamptons that cost more than most people's houses. I know because it made the society pages. Russo Empire heir weds, Russian beauty. I wasn't invited, not that I expected to be, but Svetlana made sure I knew about it anyway. She tagged me in a post, "Family is everything. Wish Elena Russo could have been here to celebrate." Sorry, not sorry. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Wait, his sister wasn't invited? That's cold. I heard she got cut out of the will. Drama. Girl clearly couldn't afford a dress nice enough for this wedding, lol. I should have blocked her. Should have stayed off social media entirely. But I needed to watch, needed to document, needed to see exactly how high Ethan was climbing. Because the higher they climb, the harder they fall. 4 months in, they sold the Cape Cod beach house. My beach house. The one Dad had promised me. The one where we'd spent every summer, just the two of us. The one that held every good memory I had of him. Sold to some tech bro for $8 million. Some venture capitalist named Chad or Brad or something equally generic who probably planned to tear it down and build some glass monstrosity. Ethan posted the closing papers like a trophy. Out with the old, in with the new. Goodbye, childhood, hello, future. Sometimes you gotta let go of the past to build something better. Real estate winning. That one broke something in me. I was at work when I saw it, serving coffee to a table of businessmen who were complaining about their golf handicaps. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the pot. "You okay, honey?" one of them asked. I smiled. "Fine, just tired." I made it to the bathroom before I threw up. That night, I drove to Vermont. Didn't tell Maria I was coming. Just showed up at her door at midnight, and she took one look at my face and pulled me inside. "He sold it," I said. "The beach house. He sold it." Maria made me tea. Let me cry. Then, when I was done, she pulled out the video footage. "Watch this again," she said gently. "Remember why we're waiting." On the screen, Dad, looking right at the camera, his voice weak but clear. "Got him, Principessa. That boy's greed will hang him." I watched it 3 times. Then I drove back to Jersey City and got ready for my morning shift. The Christmas card arrived at Mel's Diner because I'd had all my mail forwarded there. Didn't want Ethan to have my real address, wherever I was living. The envelope was expensive, cream-colored, thick stock, addressed in gold calligraphy. Elena Russo, like we were still family. Inside, a photo of Ethan and Svetlana in front of our Christmas tree. Not their tree, ours. The massive Douglas fir Dad used to set up in the great room every year, the one he'd decorate while playing Sinatra and drinking eggnog. They were holding champagne flutes, smiling those practiced smiles. Svetlana's other hand rested on her stomach. The note, in Svetlana's looping cursive, "Merry Christmas from our family. We're expecting a little one in June. Hope you're doing well. ENS." She was pregnant. Ethan was going to be a father, using Dad's money to raise a kid in Dad's house under Dad's Christmas tree. I taped that card to my bathroom mirror, looked at it every morning while I brushed my teeth with the discount toothpaste I bought at the dollar store. Let it fuel me. Because here's what Ethan didn't understand. Every humiliation, every Instagram post, every casual cruelty was making him comfortable, complacent. Convinced he'd won so completely that I'd never fight back. He was documenting his own crimes, showing off the money he'd stolen, bragging about the life he was living on Dad's grave, and I was taking notes every single time. 6 months in, I started seeing them around the city. At restaurants I couldn't afford but walked past on my way to work, at galas covered by the society pages, at charity events where Ethan played the generous philanthropist, wearing Dad's tuxedo, making speeches about family legacy and giving back. Once I served them coffee. It was at a hotel brunch. I'd picked up a catering shift for extra money. The company needed people last minute, and I said yes because I always said yes. I was refilling water glasses when I looked up and saw them. Table 12, Ethan in a cashmere sweater, Svetlana in something white and expensive, both looking at their phones, barely talking to each other. My heart stopped. For a second I thought about running, about faking sick, about anything to avoid this. Then I remembered. Lena. I'm Lena. Nobody. Nothing. Invisible. I walked over with the water pitcher. "Good morning. Can I start you with coffee?" Svetlana didn't even look up. "Yes, almond milk, and make sure it's hot this time. Last place brought it lukewarm." "Of course, ma'am." Ethan glanced at me. For one heart-stopping second, I thought he recognized me. Then he said, "Yeah, black for me. And hurry up, we've got a thing at 11. I nodded, smiled, walked away. My hands were shaking so hard I had to set the pitcher down in the kitchen. But I'd done it. Stood 3 feet away from my brother, and he hadn't recognized me. Hadn't seen his own sister serving him coffee. That's when I knew the disguise was working. I'd become exactly what he expected me to be. Nobody. And nobody can sneak up on you like someone you've stopped seeing. My real work started after my shifts ended. While Ethan posted photos of bottle service at clubs and Svetlana showed off her maternity fashion, I'd come home to my Jersey City studio, order the cheapest Chinese takeout, and spread everything across my floor. Dad's medical records, both wills. Financial statements I'd managed to pull from Dad's office before Ethan changed the locks. Bank statements, business filings, property deeds. This is where that master's in forensic accounting finally paid off. Most people think forensic accounting is boring, numbers and spreadsheets and tax codes. But Dad had taught me the truth. Numbers tell stories, and if you know how to read them, they tell you exactly when someone's lying. Ethan's fake will was dated March 15th. According to the will, Dad was supposedly lucid and clear-headed when he signed it. But according to the medical records, the real ones Maria had saved, Dad was on a morphine drip at 8 a.m. that morning, adjusted up because his pain had been unmanageable the night before. The dosage was so high that the nurse had noted, patient non-responsive, sleeping peacefully. At 2 p.m., when the will was supposedly signed, Dad was still listed as sedated minimal responsiveness. The notary who'd signed off? A woman named Jessica Park. I looked her up. She'd worked for Davidson's law firm for 6 years, quit 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, current location, unknown, paid off and probably, or scared off. The witnesses on the fake will, 2 people I'd never heard of, Michael Torres and David Chen. I ran their names through every database I could access. Nothing. They didn't exist. Ethan had literally invented people to witness a will. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, the alterations to Dad's medical chart. Whoever had done it was good, but not good enough. The digital timestamps didn't match. Someone had accessed the hospital system 4 days after Dad died and changed several entries to make it look like he'd been more lucid than he was. The access logs showed the computer terminal, Davidson's law office. I documented everything. Screenshots, PDFs, paper copies hidden in a storage unit I'd rented under a fake name in Hoboken, uploaded to 3 separate cloud accounts with different email addresses. If Ethan somehow found one, destroyed one, there were 2 more. That's when I met Rosa Diaz. She found me, actually. I'd posted in a few online forums for people dealing with contested wills, looking for pro bono legal help. Used a fake name but laid out the basics. Brother forged a will, stole inheritance, have proof. She messaged me. I might be able to help. Let's talk. We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Rosa was maybe 40, dressed in a suit that had seen better days, with the kind of tired eyes that come from fighting too many losing battles. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said, stirring her coffee. "Cases like this are hard. The burden of proof is on you, and if your brother has money, he can drag this out until you're bankrupt." "What if I had proof?" "What kind of proof?" I told her. "Not everything, not yet, but enough." "The second will, the medical records, the witness who'd fled." Rosa leaned back, studying me. "You're that Russo, Elena Russo. I saw the obituary. Your father's Victor Russo, the Russo Foods empire." "Was. And your brother's telling everyone you were cut out because—" She trailed off, searching for the polite way to say it. "Because I'm unstable, unreliable, didn't understand the business." "But you have a master's in forensic accounting from University of Denver." I blinked. "How did you—" "I do my homework." She smiled, but it was sad. "My father died 3 years ago, left everything to my older brother. I got nothing. My brother said it was because I was difficult. Turns out he'd convinced my dad, who had dementia, to sign a new will. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I lost. Couldn't prove it. Couldn't afford to fight." She looked at me. "But maybe you can." That was 9 months ago. Since then, Rosa and I had met every 2 weeks, sometimes at her tiny office in Queens, sometimes at diners where nobody would recognize us. Once, memorably, in the parking lot of a Chuck E. Cheese because her kid had a birthday party, and it was the only time she had free. We built the case piece by piece. We needed 3 things: proof of forgery, proof of intent, and proof that Dad was competent when he wrote the real will. The forgery was easy with the medical records showing Dad was sedated. Intent was harder. We needed to show Ethan knew what he was doing was illegal. That's where the nanny cam footage came in. "This video," Rosa said, watching it for the 10th time. "This changes everything. Your father literally set a trap. He knew what Ethan was planning, and he pretended to sign to catch him in the act. Is it admissible? If we can prove the chain of custody, that's where your witness comes in. Maria needs to testify she took it directly from the camera, that she's had it in her possession since, that it hasn't been altered. She will. And she's still in Vermont? Yes. Safe." Rosa nodded slowly. "Here's the thing, Elena. For this to work, we can't just prove Ethan forged a will. We need to make him confident enough to bury himself." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we need him to think he's won, really won. So when we pull the rug out, he has nowhere to land." That's when she told me her plan. "Let him sue you." I stared. "What? He's already harassing you, right? Threatening you for asking questions about the will. Let him take it to court. Let him ask for a restraining order. Because that means discovery. That means witnesses. That means putting everything on the public record where he can't hide it. You want him to drag me into court? I want him to think he's crushing you in court, right up until the moment we show the judge what he really is." It was risky, insane even, but it was also exactly the kind of patient, methodical trap Dad would have approved of. "We need him to come to us," Rosa said, voluntarily, confidently, so sure he's going to win that he doesn't see the cliff until he's already falling off. I thought about Ethan's Instagram, his arrogance, his absolute certainty that I was broken. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." Rosa smiled. "For your father?" "For my father." We shook hands across the sticky Chuck E. Cheese table, over the sound of kids screaming and arcade games bleeping. 2 women nobody would bet on, planning the perfect trap. The lawsuit came exactly when Rosa predicted it would. 14 months after Dad's funeral, 2 months after I'd started asking Ethan, politely, deferentially, like the broken little sister he expected, about some of Dad's business assets. "Hey, I was just wondering about the warehouse in Queens. Didn't Dad always say that was supposed to be split between us?" "I'm just confused about the timing of the will. Could I see the original, maybe?" "Do you remember what Dad said about the beach house? I thought he mentioned it was for me." Each message carefully crafted to sound desperate, confused, and just annoying enough. Ethan's responses got progressively more hostile. "Drop it, Elena. You're embarrassing yourself. Dad made his choice. Accept it." Then, finally, "If you contact me one more time, I'm getting a restraining order. I'm not kidding. You're harassing me." Perfect. I sent one more message. "I just want to understand." The lawsuit arrived 3 days later. Ethan was suing me for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and, my personal favorite, defamation for spreading false rumors about the will. He wanted a restraining order preventing me from contacting him, coming near any of his properties, or making any further claims about the estate. Rosa called me the moment the papers were served. "You okay?" I was standing in my studio apartment holding the lawsuit, and I was smiling. Actually smiling. He took the bait. "He took the bait," she confirmed. "Now comes the hard part. Elena, he's going to parade you. His lawyers are going to make you look unstable, desperate, delusional. They're going to bring up every mistake you've ever made. They're going to paint you as the jealous sister who can't accept that Daddy didn't love her as much." "I know. You're going to have to sit there and take it. Can you do that?" I thought about the diner, about serving coffee to rude businessmen, about watching Ethan sell my childhood home on Instagram, about 18 months of swallowing my pride, my rage, my truth. "I can do it." Good. Because once we call Maria to the stand, there's no going back. This becomes nuclear. Your brother goes to prison. Do you understand that? Not just losing the money, prison. I looked at the photo on my wall. The only thing I'd kept from the old house. Me and Dad on the sailboat in Cape Cod, both of us squinting into the sun, his arm around my shoulders. "He forged a will," I said quietly. "He manipulated a dying man. He threatened to deport an immigrant woman who was just trying to do her job. He stole everything Dad built, everything Dad wanted to leave to me, and he's spending it like it's monopoly money while posting about family legacy. So that's a yes? That's a yes." The next 3 months were a blur of preparation. Rosa and I met every few days, going over every detail, every document, every second of testimony. We coached Maria, flew her down from Vermont for weekend sessions where we'd practice her testimony again and again. What Ethan said, what Dad said, what she saw, keeping it simple, factual, unimpeachable. "They're going to try to discredit you," Rosa told her. "They'll say you're lying for money, that Elena paid you off, that you're an illegal immigrant who—" "I'm a legal resident," Maria said firmly. "I have my green card, and I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because Mr. Russo was a good man who didn't deserve what his son did to him." "Good. That's exactly what you tell the judge." We reviewed the video footage, made backup copies, had it analyzed by a digital forensics expert who confirmed it was authentic, unedited, original timestamp intact. We compiled the medical records into a timeline that even a kindergartner could understand. Here's when Dad was lucid. Here's when he signed the real will. Here's when he was sedated. Here's when the fake will was supposedly signed. We found the access logs showing Davidson's law office had altered the hospital records. We found bank transfers showing Ethan had paid Davidson's firm $500,000 2 weeks before the will was discovered. We built a case so airtight that Ethan would need magic to escape it. But he didn't know any of this. All Ethan knew was that his pathetic little sister was showing up to court in a cheap suit, looking defeated, barely able to afford a lawyer. "Are you sure about this?" Rosa asked me the night before the hearing. We were in her office going over everything one last time. "He's going to be vicious tomorrow. Svetlana will be there. His lawyer will destroy you on the stand if we give them a chance." "I'm sure." "Why?" "Because Dad taught me something when I was 12 years old. We were sailing and I got frustrated because I couldn't get the boom to swing the right way. I wanted to force it. Dad told me, sometimes the best move is to let the wind think it's winning. Let it push you where it wants. Then, when it's not looking, you change course." Rosa smiled. "Your father was a smart man." "He was, and he knew his son." I looked at the video still we'd paused on. Dad winking at the camera while Ethan stood behind him, oblivious. Ethan's greed is his weakness, always has been. Dad used it against him. Now I'm going to finish what Dad started. The higher they fly, Rosa said, the harder they fall. We spent that last night going over every scenario, every possible objection Ethan's lawyers might raise, every way they might try to block Maria's testimony or discredit the video. By 3 a.m., we were both exhausted, running on coffee and righteous anger. "Go home," Rosa finally said. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we end this." I went back to my studio apartment, lay awake watching the ceiling, listening to the car alarms. Tomorrow I'd face Ethan in court. Tomorrow he'd laugh at me, mock me, think he'd won. Tomorrow he'd have no idea that in exactly 9 minutes after that laugh, Maria Delgado would walk through those doors and flip his entire world upside down. The wait was almost over. 18 months of patience, 18 months of playing broken, 18 months of letting him think he'd won. It all came down to tomorrow. I fell asleep smiling. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and other people's misery. I showed up an hour early wearing the same cheap black dress I'd worn to Dad's funeral, hair in a messy bun that I'd deliberately left half undone. No makeup except for some mascara I'd smudged slightly to look like I'd been crying. Shoes from Payless with a scuff mark on the toe. I looked exactly like what I was supposed to look like, a woman who'd lost everything and knew it. Rosa met me on the courthouse steps. She'd dressed down, too, one of her older suits, a little worn at the elbows, sensible shoes. We looked like public defenders with too many cases and not enough hours in the day. "You ready?" she asked. "I was born ready." She squeezed my hand. "Remember, no matter what they say, no matter how they try to provoke you, you stay calm. You stay small. You let them think they've already won." I know the role. We walked into the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected from TV shows, just a handful of benches, plain wood paneling, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly corpse-like. The judge's bench loomed at the front, empty for now. I took my seat at the defendant's table, smoothed my cheap dress, folded my hands in my lap to hide the fact that they wanted to shake. Then Ethan arrived. He didn't walk in. He made an entrance. The courtroom doors swung open and there he was. Designer suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Shoes so shiny you could see your reflection. Watch that screamed, "I have more money than you'll ever see." And beside him, Svetlana. She wore a white fur coat even though it was May. White. To a courthouse. Like she was making a statement about her purity or innocence, or maybe just her complete lack of self-awareness. Her belly was visible now, 6 months pregnant, glowing with that pregnancy radiance that's partly hormones and partly expensive moisturizer. They looked like they were walking into a charity gala, not a court hearing. Ethan's lawyer followed them. Harlan something or other, a guy who looked like every shark lawyer in every legal drama. Slicked back hair, $10,000 suit, briefcase that probably contained the souls of people he'd destroyed. Ethan saw me and smirked. Actually smirked. He leaned over and whispered something to Svetlana. She looked at me, wrinkled her nose like she'd smelled something bad, and laughed. I kept my eyes down, played with the loose thread on my dress hem. Let them think I was ashamed. Let them think I was beaten. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Thornton, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen every kind of lie. She looked tired. Like this was just another case in a long day of cases. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Thornton," the bailiff called. We stood, sat. "This is case number 2024 CV8847, Ethan Victor Russo versus Elena Marie Russo. The plaintiff is seeking a restraining order and damages for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Mr. Harlan, you may begin." Harlan stood, buttoning his suit jacket in that way lawyers do when they want to look important. "Thank you, Your Honor. This is a sad case, a case of a young woman who, unable to accept her late father's final wishes, has spent the past year harassing my client, calling him at all hours, showing up uninvited, spreading false rumors about the validity of their father's will. He presented Exhibit A, screenshots of my messages to Ethan, each one carefully taken out of context to sound desperate, unhinged. I just want to understand. Please, can we talk about this? This doesn't make sense. Without the full context, they looked like the ramblings of someone unstable. Your Honor, Harlan continued, pacing like he was delivering a closing argument in a murder trial. Mr. Russo has been more than patient. He's tried to help his sister, offered her money even though he was under no legal obligation to do so. But she has rebuffed every attempt at reconciliation and instead chosen to wage a campaign of harassment that has caused my client and his pregnant wife considerable emotional distress. Pregnant wife. He made sure to emphasize that. The vulnerability, the innocent baby caught up in this. Harlan called his first witness, a private investigator who testified that I'd been observed outside properties owned by Ethan. Where was Ms. Russo observed? Harlan asked. Outside the Manhattan penthouse on 3 occasions, outside the office building twice. She appeared to be watching the entrance. What he didn't mention, I'd walked past those places on my way to work. The penthouse was 2 blocks from the subway station. The office building was across from a diner where I sometimes picked up catering shifts. But Harlan made it sound like I was stalking. The second witness was one of the staff from Dad's funeral, one of the servers Ethan had hired. She testified that I'd been acting erratically and making accusations at the reception. What kind of accusations? Harlan asked, his voice dripping with concern. She was telling people the will was fake, that Mr. Russo, the younger Mr. Russo, had forged it. She seemed very agitated, not herself. I'd said those things to 2 people, both distant relatives who'd worked with Dad. I'd said it quietly, testing the waters, trying to see if anyone else thought something was off. Harlan made it sound like I'd stood on a table screaming. Then came the will itself. Harlan presented it with the reverence of someone unveiling the Constitution. The fake will, signed and dated and notarized, with Dad's shaky signature at the bottom. This is Mr. Victor Russo's last will and testament, properly executed and witnessed. It clearly states his wishes regarding his estate. He called the notary, or rather a new notary since Jessica Park had mysteriously vanished. This one testified that all proper procedures were followed and that the will was legally binding. Then came the doctored medical records, a doctor I'd never seen before. Not Dad's actual oncologist, but some specialist Ethan had apparently consulted, testified that Dad had been remarkably lucid in his final weeks. Some patients experience what we call terminal clarity, brief periods of unusual mental acuity. It's possible Mr. Russo had such a moment when he executed his will. Possible. Not probable, not this is what happened, just possible. But Harlan made it sound like a certainty. One by one, Ethan's paid witnesses took the stand, each one adding another layer to the story. Dad was clear-headed. Dad knew what he wanted. Dad specifically wanted Ethan to have everything. And me? I was the delusional daughter who couldn't accept it. Rosa objected when she could. Speculation, Your Honor. Hearsay, Your Honor. This witness has no direct knowledge of... But Judge Thornton looked bored. She'd seen this before. Bitter family disputes over money. Someone always thought they deserved more. I sat there the whole time, taking notes, smiling slightly whenever Harlan said something particularly absurd. Not a confident smile, a sad one. The kind that says, I know no one believes me, but I have to try anyway. Ethan watched me. I could feel his eyes. Every time I glanced up, he was staring, that smirk still playing at the corners of his mouth. He thought he'd won. Svetlana wasn't even paying attention. She was on her phone, scrolling through Instagram, occasionally showing Ethan something that made them both snicker. Harlan's closing argument was a masterpiece of manipulation. Your Honor, I ask you to consider what we have here. a grieving son who lost his father, who stepped up to manage a complicated estate, who tried to include his sister, to be generous even when the will didn't require it. And how was he repaid? With accusations, with harassment, with a campaign to destroy his reputation. He paused for effect. Ms. Russo is not a bad person. She's a person in pain, a person who lost her father and couldn't accept that, in his final days, he made choices she disagreed with. But pain doesn't give anyone the right to harass, to stalk, to spread false accusations. My client asks only for peace, for the ability to grieve his father and start his new family without constant harassment from someone who refuses to accept reality. He sat down. Judge Thornton looked at Rosa. Does the defense wish to present any witnesses? This was it, the moment we'd planned for. 18 months building to this. Rosa stood. Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Maria Delgado. The courtroom doors didn't open. Harlan looked confused. Ethan frowned. Svetlana finally looked up from her phone. Judge Thornton checked her watch. Is your witness present, Ms. Diaz? She's on her way, Your Honor. She was instructed to wait outside until called. Another pause. Then slowly the doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and Maria walked in. The color drained from Ethan's face so fast I thought he might pass out. It wasn't a metaphor. He literally went from his fake tan bronze to the color of spoiled milk, with a slight green tinge around the edges. His mouth opened, closed. Opened again like a fish, drowning in air. Svetlana dropped her phone. The clatter echoed in the silent courtroom. Her $1,000 iPhone hit the floor face down, and she just stared at Maria like she was seeing a ghost. Because in Ethan's mind, Maria was a ghost. She was supposed to be gone, disappeared, back in Honduras or hiding somewhere, too scared to ever surface. But here she was, walking down the center aisle of the courtroom in a simple blue dress, her hair shorter than before, wearing glasses she didn't used to wear, but unmistakably, undeniably Maria Delgado. She walked right past Ethan's table, stopped, turned to look him directly in the eye. "Hello, Mr. Russo," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Remember me? I'm the nurse you threatened to kill if I ever spoke up." The courtroom erupted. Harlan jumped up so fast his chair fell over backward. "Objection, Your Honor, this witness hasn't been disclosed. This is ambush tactics. This is—" Judge Thornton's gavel came down like a gunshot. Crack! "Mr. Harlan, sit down and be quiet, or I will hold you in contempt. Ms. Diaz, approach the bench, now." Rosa walked up to the judge's bench. Harlan followed, his face red, jabbing his finger at Rosa and hissing things I couldn't hear. I watched Ethan. He'd recovered some color but was now whispering frantically to Harlan's assistant, a younger lawyer who looked like he wished he'd chosen literally any other career. Ethan's hands were shaking. Actually shaking. Svetlana had bent down to pick up her phone. Her hands were trembling too. She kept looking at Maria, then at Ethan, then back at Maria, like she was trying to figure out if this was real. At the bench, Judge Thornton was reading something Rosa had handed her. Her expression shifted from annoyed to interested to absolutely focused. After what felt like an hour but was probably 3 minutes, she waved them back. "I'm going to allow this witness. Mr. Harlan, your objection is noted for the record. Ms. Delgado, please take the stand." Maria walked to the witness stand, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God. And then she told the truth. All of it. "Please state your name for the record," Rosa began. "Maria Delgado." "And what was your relationship with Victor Russo?" "I was his private nurse for the last 6 months of his life. I worked 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. I was with him almost constantly. And you heard Mr. Harlan's testimony that Mr. Russo was lucid when he signed the will, dated March 15th, 2023? I heard it. It's not true." Harlan shot up. "Objection. She's not qualified to—" I'm a registered nurse with 15 years of experience, Maria said calmly, looking directly at the judge. I specialized in palliative care. I know what lucidity looks like. And on March 15th, Mr. Russo was not lucid. He'd been on a morphine drip all morning. His pain had been terrible the night before. I was the one who adjusted his medication. He was sleeping when I checked on him at 2 p.m., the time the will was supposedly signed. Do you have documentation of this? I do. Rosa handed her a manila envelope. Maria pulled out the medical records, the real ones. These are the original records from the hospital system, not the ones that were altered later. See here? She pointed to a line, 8 a.m. Morphine increased to 15 milligrams. Patient non-responsive. 2 p.m. Patient still sedated. No significant consciousness. Judge Thornton leaned forward. Ms. Diaz, are you claiming these records were altered? Yes, Your Honor, and we can prove it. Rosa pulled out a thick folder. These are the access logs from the hospital's electronic medical records system. They show someone accessed Mr. Russo's file 4 days after his death from a computer at Harlan Davidson's law office and modified several entries. Harlan was on his feet. That's absurd. Your Honor, this is a desperate attempt to— Sit down. Judge Thornton didn't yell. She didn't have to. Her voice had enough ice in it to freeze the entire courtroom. Ms. Diaz, continue. Rosa nodded to Maria. Tell the court what happened on March 18th, 4 days before Mr. Russo died. Maria took a deep breath. It was 2 a.m. I was in the bathroom, cleaning up. Mr. Russo had been sick earlier. I heard voices in his room. I cracked the door and saw Ethan, Mr. Russo's son, standing over the bed with papers. What did you hear? Ethan said, Just sign here, Pop. It's just updating some accounts, making things easier for when, when it's time. And did Mr. Russo sign? He pretended to, but— Maria paused. Mr. Russo was smarter than his son knew. He'd skipped his evening morphine dose. He'd told me earlier that day he felt like something was coming, that Ethan had been asking too many questions about the business, about the will. He wanted to be alert. What happened next? Mr. Russo picked up the pen with his shaking hand. He made some marks on the paper. I couldn't see if he actually wrote his name or just scribbles. Then Ethan kissed his forehead and said, Thanks, Pop. You rest now. I'll take care of everything. Maria's voice cracked. The moment Ethan left the room, Mr. Russo opened his eyes, looked right at me and said, Get out. Take the real one. Protect my little girl. The courtroom was dead silent. The real one? Rosa prompted. The real will. Mr. Russo had executed a new will 3 months earlier, when he was having one of his clear days. He'd hidden a copy in his cigar box. He told me if anything happened, if Ethan tried something, I was to take it and find Elena. And did you? Yes, I took the will. And I took something else. Maria looked directly at Ethan. Mr. Russo had installed a nanny cam in his room months earlier. He didn't trust Ethan. He thought Ethan might try something like this, so he recorded everything. She pulled out a small SD card in a plastic evidence bag. This contains footage from March 18th, 2:01 a.m. It shows exactly what happened. The courtroom exploded again. Harlan was screaming about chain of custody and evidence tampering and illegal recordings. Svetlana was crying, actual tears running down her carefully made-up face, saying something in Russian that sounded like cursing. And Ethan? Ethan stood up. Just stood up like he was going to walk out. The bailiff moved immediately. Sir, please sit down. I have to. Ethan's voice was high, panicked. Sit down, Judge Thornton commanded. Bailiff, if Mr. Russo tries to leave this courtroom, detain him. Ethan sat. His hands were fists on the table. His jaw was clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping. Rosa addressed the judge. Your Honor, we'd like to play the video footage. Objection! Harlan tried one more time, but his heart wasn't in it. He knew. He had to know. This was over. Overruled, play it. The bailiff set up a laptop connected to the courtroom's display screen. Rosa inserted the SD card, and there it was, Dad's hospital room. The view from up high from the smoke detector where the camera was hidden. Dad in bed, his face drawn and gray, but his eyes were sharp, alert, the way they used to be before the cancer, before the pain, before the morphine. The timestamp, March 18, 2023, 1:58 a.m. The door opened. Ethan walked in, carrying papers. He looked around, actually looked right at the camera without seeing it, then approached the bed. "Pop, you awake?" Dad didn't move. "I need you to sign something. It's important. It's about the business." Dad's eyes cracked open. "Ethan?" "Yeah, Pop, it's me. Listen, this is just some paperwork, making things easier for later. You just need to sign here." Dad's hand moved slowly. Ethan held out a pen, and just before Dad touched the pen, he looked directly at the camera and winked. A slow, deliberate wink. Then he took the pen, made some shaky marks on the paper. "Good, Pop. That's good. You rest now." Ethan kissed his forehead, that same gesture I'd seen 100 times, but now it made my skin crawl, and left the room. 3 seconds of silence. Then Dad turned his head toward where the bathroom door was. "Maria." His voice was weak but clear. The video showed Maria coming into frame. "Mr. Russo, get out, take the real one, protect my little girl." He coughed, winced. "Got him, Principessa. That boy's greed will hang him." The video ended. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Judge Thornton stared at the blank screen, then at Ethan, then at the papers in front of her. "Mr. Russo," she said quietly, "stand up." Ethan stood. His face was blank. Shock, I think. Complete dissociative shock. In 30 years on the bench, I have seen a lot of terrible things, but I have rarely seen something so calculated, so cruel. She looked at Harlan. "Mr. Harlan, I'm dismissing your client's case, and I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution." "Your Honor," Harlan tried. "I'm not finished. Bailiff, take Mr. Russo into custody. He's not to leave this courthouse." Ethan tried to run, actually tried to bolt for the door. The 2 bailiffs moved faster than I thought men that size could move. They had Ethan face down on the courtroom floor in about 3 seconds. One of them had a knee in his back while the other cuffed his hands. "Get off me! You can't! I didn't!" Svetlana was screaming now. "What is happening? Ethan! Ethan!" Judge Thornton's gavel came down one more time. "Miss Volkov, be quiet or you'll join him. Ms. Russo, Elena Russo, approach the bench." I stood on shaking legs and walked forward. The judge looked at me, really looked at me, saw past the cheap dress and the messy hair and the exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry you had to go through this. I'm sorry your father had to die knowing his son would do this. But I want you to know, justice will be served. I'm ordering the previous will null and void. I'm fast-tracking the probate of the legitimate will Ms. Delgado has provided, and I'm making sure your brother answers for what he did." I tried to speak, couldn't, just nodded. Behind me, the bailiffs were hauling Ethan to his feet. He was crying now, full-on sobbing. "Please, please, it wasn't my idea. Davidson told me. He said it was legal. I didn't mean—" They dragged him toward the door. As he passed my table, he looked at me, and I looked back. And I smiled, not a sad smile, not a broken smile, a smile that said, "Dad was right. Your greed did hang you." Then he was gone, and I finally let myself cry, not from pain, from relief, from justice, from knowing that Dad had been protecting me, even from beyond the grave. Rosa put her arm around me. "You did it," she whispered. "He's gone." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, ruining the carefully smudged mascara I'd applied that morning. "We did it," I corrected. "Dad did it." Because that wink, that perfect moment captured on video, was pure Victor Russo. Even dying, even in pain, even drugged, he'd outsmarted his own son, set a trap 18 months in the making, and I'd just finished what he started. The weeks after the courtroom collapsed into chaos moved like a dream, or maybe a nightmare, depending on which side of the gavel you were standing on. For me, it was vindication in slow motion. Judge Thornton didn't waste time. Within 48 hours of Maria's testimony and that damning video, she issued a formal ruling that read like a legal execution. The will dated March 15, 2023, purportedly executed by Victor Anthony Russo, is hereby declared null and void due to clear and convincing evidence of fraud, forgery, undue influence, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The will dated June 20, 2023, previously suppressed, is entered into probate as the legitimate last will and testament of the deceased. Every asset Ethan had touched, every property he'd sold, every investment he'd made with Dad's money, frozen immediately. The Manhattan penthouse, the cars, the offshore accounts Svetlana thought she'd been so clever about hiding, all of it locked down by court order while the legal machinery ground into motion. The district attorney's office moved even faster than I expected. Ethan was charged with 12 counts: forgery in the first degree, grand larceny, elder abuse, fraud, witness tampering, conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying business records, identity theft, criminal impersonation, obstruction of justice, attempted coercion of a witness, perjury, 12 counts, each one carrying prison time. His arraignment was 3 days after the courtroom disaster. Rosa and I sat in the gallery, watching as they brought him in. No more Tom Ford suits, no more expensive haircuts or cologne that smelled like arrogance. Just an orange jumpsuit that was too big, making him look smaller, younger, like a kid playing dress-up in his father's clothes. His hands were cuffed in front of him. He shuffled when he walked, the chains on his ankles making that distinctive metal scraping sound that echoes in courtrooms and nightmares. Harlan had abandoned him, lawyered up himself, actually, because that alteration of medical records, that had his fingerprints all over it. Ethan's new attorney was a public defender who looked about 12 years old and completely overwhelmed. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, not guilty. But we all knew the video alone was enough to bury him. Add in Maria's testimony, the medical records, the digital forensics showing Davidson's office had altered hospital files, the bank records showing suspicious payments. It was airtight. The bail hearing was almost funny. Ethan's baby-faced lawyer argued for release on his own recognizance. "Your Honor, my client has significant ties to the community. He's not a flight risk. His wife is pregnant." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Kawamoto, who'd made her career on white-collar crime, stood up with a folder that had to be 3 inches thick. "Your Honor, the defendant has extensive financial resources hidden in offshore accounts. He's already demonstrated a willingness to threaten witnesses, forge documents, and manipulate vulnerable individuals. He attempted to flee this courthouse. And his wife," she used air quotes that made it clear what she thought of Svetlana, "left the country 8 hours after the previous hearing. She's currently in Monaco and has refused to return to the United States." The judge set bail at $10 million. Ethan didn't have it. All his liquid assets were frozen. The offshore accounts Svetlana had drained before she fled. The properties couldn't be used as collateral because they were all tied up in probate. He went back to Rikers Island. The trial took 4 months to prepare. Ethan's new legal team, he'd managed to get slightly better lawyers, though still nothing like Harlan, tried every delay tactic in the book. Continuances, motions to suppress, arguments about the admissibility of the video. Nothing worked. The video was clean. Maria's testimony was unimpeachable. The digital forensics were solid. Even the notary they'd tracked down, Jessica Park, who'd been hiding in Arizona, came forward with her own story of how Ethan and Davidson had paid her $50,000 to notarize a will she'd never actually witnessed. In the end, Ethan took a plea deal. 12 years, minimum security if he behaved, restitution of all assets, all properties, everything returned to the estate, meaning returned to me as the legitimate heir. The sentencing hearing was packed. Media, curious onlookers, some of Dad's old business associates who wanted to see justice done. Ethan stood before the judge in that same orange jumpsuit. They read the charges, read the plea agreement, asked if he understood. "Yes," he said. So quietly the judge had to ask him to repeat it. "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Russo, do you have anything to say before sentencing?" For a moment, I thought he might actually apologize, might show some remorse, some understanding of what he'd done. Instead, I was trying to protect the family business. My father wasn't himself at the end. I thought, "You thought you'd forge a will, threaten a witness, and steal $50 million? The judge's voice was ice. "That's your definition of protecting something?" Ethan's mouth closed, opened, closed again. 12 years, the judge said. "And I hope you spend every one of them thinking about what your greed cost you. Bailiff, remove him." They took him away. I watched him go, that shuffle walk in chains, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity, just emptiness where he used to be. Rosa squeezed my hand. "It's over." "It's over," I agreed. But really, it was just beginning, because now I had to figure out who I was when I wasn't fighting anymore. I told myself I wouldn't go. Why would I? What was left to say? Ethan had been sentenced. The money was being returned. The properties were back in my name. Justice had been served. Case closed. Move on. But 3 months into his sentence, I got a letter, handwritten. His handwriting, which I recognized from 1,000 birthday cards and Christmas lists and notes stuck to the fridge when we were kids. "Elena, please come see me. I need to explain, please." E. That please got me. He'd never been a please kind of person, always demanding, always entitled. But this was begging. "Rosa told me not to go. He's going to try to manipulate you, make excuses. It's what people like him do." "I know. So why go?" I thought about that for a long time. Finally, because I need to look him in the eye and know that this is really over, that I'm not carrying him with me anymore. The prison was 2 hours upstate. Gray concrete walls, razor wire, guard towers, the kind of place that makes you feel guilty just for driving past it. The visitor room was worse. Fluorescent lights that hummed like angry bees, plastic chairs bolted to the floor, vending machines that looked like they'd been there since the Reagan administration. Everything smelled like industrial cleaner trying and failing to cover the smell of desperation. I sat at a table marked 7 and waited. They brought him out in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front, ankles shackled. A guard walked beside him, close enough to grab him if needed. God, he looked small. Not physically smaller. He'd probably lost 20 pounds, but that wasn't it. It was something else. Like someone had let the air out of him. The arrogance, the swagger, the absolute certainty that he deserved everything gone. What was left was just a man. A scared, broken man in cheap prison clothes. He sat down across from me. The guard stepped back, but stayed close. "Thanks for coming," Ethan said. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been crying or yelling or both. I didn't say anything, just waited. "I'm sorry." He said it fast, like he'd been practicing. "I'm so sorry, Elena. I wasn't thinking straight. The pressure, you know? Dad's business and everyone expecting me to be him, and I just... Don't." He blinked. "What? Don't do that. Don't blame the pressure. Don't blame Dad's expectations. You forged a will. You threatened Maria. You spent 18 months parading around with stolen money while I served coffee for minimum wage. I know, but... You laughed at me in court, Ethan. You actually laughed." His face crumpled. Real tears now, not the crocodile kind. "I was scared. I knew you'd found something, I just didn't know what. I thought if I could make you look crazy." "Make me look crazy?" My voice was flat. "Or make yourself feel better about what you'd done?" "Both." At least he was honest about that. "I don't know." I wasn't thinking. Svetlana kept saying we had to protect what was ours, and the lawyer said, Davidson said what? That it was okay to forge your dying father's signature, that it was legal to threaten an immigrant woman's family? He said we could make it work, that Dad wasn't competent anyway, so really we were just correcting an oversight. I stared at him. An oversight. That's what you're calling it. I'm trying to explain. I don't want explanations. I leaned forward. The guard tensed, ready to intervene, but I just looked at Ethan. Really looked at him. Do you remember what Dad always said? About family? Ethan nodded, more tears sliding down his face. Family is everything. Right, family is everything. Not money, not the business, not property or status or Instagram likes. Family. I stood up. You forgot that. You looked at Dad dying in his bed and you saw dollar signs. You looked at me and saw competition. You looked at Maria and saw an obstacle. I'm sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry you're in here instead of in that penthouse with Svetlana, who left you, by the way, the second things got hard. Took your money and ran to Monaco. That's the family you chose. Elena, please. You know what Dad said to Maria, right before he died? After you left his room thinking you'd won? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He said, Got him, Principessa. That boy's greed will hang him. Ethan's face went white. He knew Ethan. He knew exactly what you were, what you'd always been, and he set a trap for you because he knew you couldn't help yourself, because your greed was bigger than your love, bigger than your loyalty, bigger than anything that actually matters. I picked up my bag. I'm not coming back. I'm not writing. I'm not taking your calls. You're not my brother anymore. You stopped being my brother the night you forged that will. Please. He was full on sobbing now. Please, we're still. I leaned down close enough that he could hear me clearly, close enough that the guard shifted, ready to pull me back if needed. You know what Dad always said, Ethan? I repeated. Family is everything. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. Not when he called my name. Not when I heard him screaming for me to wait, to listen. Please, Elena, please. Not when the guard told him to calm down or he'd be removed from visitation privileges. I walked out of that prison, got in my car, and drove away, and I never went back. Because blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. And Ethan had proven, beyond any doubt, exactly where his loyalty lay, with himself. Always with himself. The drive home was quiet, peaceful, like closing a book I'd been reading for too long. The story was over. Ethan's chapter of my life, finished. The Cape Cod beach house was exactly as I remembered it, and nothing like I remembered it at the same time. The new owner, that tech bro named Brad or Chad or whatever, had bought it planning to tear it down. Permits filed, contractor hired, demolition scheduled for the following month. But when the court reversed the sale, when everything Ethan had touched got unwound like a bad sweater, the house came back to me. I stood on the porch that first day, key in hand, almost afraid to go inside. What if it wasn't the same? What if all the magic had been in Dad, not the place? What if I'd built it up in my memory into something it never really was? I unlocked the door. Inside, dust and silence, and the smell of salt air and old wood. But underneath that, underneath the neglect and the emptiness, home. I spent the next 3 months restoring it, not renovating, restoring. There's a difference. I didn't want granite countertops or stainless steel appliances or any of the modern touches that would have made it valuable. I wanted it exactly as it was when Dad and I spent those summers here. The same faded blue shutters, now repainted that exact shade of weathered ocean blue. The same creaky porch swing, which I had repaired, but specifically asked the carpenter not to fix the creak. That sound is part of it, I told him. He looked at me like I was crazy. But he did what I asked. The same battered aluminum pot for clams, which I found in the back of a cabinet, tarnished and dented and absolutely perfect. I even tracked down a sunfish sailboat, not the original that was long gone, but one just like it, dinged and scraped and bought at an estate sale for $400. I put it on the beach with a hand-painted sign, free to use, just bring it back when you're done. Because that's what Dad would have wanted. Maria came to visit that first summer. I'd offered to set her up anywhere she wanted, new house, new car, whatever she needed. She'd refused everything except help getting her nursing license reinstated and money for her kids' college funds. I didn't do this for money, Miss Elena, she'd said. I did it because it was right. But she accepted the invitation to the beach house. She came with her 2 kids, Sophia, 8, and Miguel, 6, and we spent a week cooking, swimming, telling stories about Dad. He talked about you all the time, Maria told me one evening, watching the sunset from the porch. Even when the pain was so bad he could barely speak, he'd say, "My Principessa, she's going to do great things. He was so proud of you." I wish he could have seen it. The courtroom. Ethan getting sentenced. He did see it. Maria tapped her chest. In here. He knew exactly how it would play out. That's why he set the trap. He knew you'd find the will, knew you'd find me, knew you'd be patient enough to let Ethan hang himself. Chess player, I said, remembering Rosa's words, always 5 moves ahead. Like father, like daughter. Every year since then, on the anniversary of the courtroom verdict, I do the same thing. I buy a bottle of Dad's favorite Chianti, the expensive one he'd save for special occasions, the one that cost $200 a bottle and tasted like sunshine and cherries and everything good in the world. I pour 2 glasses on the porch just as the sun starts to set. I raise mine to the ocean, to the sky, to wherever Dad is now. We got him, Dad, I say, same words every year. We got him. Then I drink both glasses, because some victories taste better when you don't have to share them, because Dad isn't here to drink his, so I do it for him, because it's a ritual, and rituals matter when you're rebuilding yourself from pieces. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry, if I regret how it all went down, if I wish I'd just taken some money early on and avoided the whole fight, and I tell them no, absolutely not. Because here's the thing about revenge, real revenge, not the angry, impulsive kind, but the patient, strategic kind. It's not about making someone suffer, it's about making sure the truth wins, about proving that lies and greed and betrayal don't get the final word. Ethan thought he'd won because he had the money, the properties, the influence, the expensive lawyers, but I won because I had something stronger. I had the truth. I had patience. I had Maria, who risked everything to keep a promise to a dying man. I had Rosa, who fought for me pro bono because she understood what it meant to be stolen from by family. I had Dad, who even in his final days, drugged and dying, loved me enough to set a trap that would protect me. That's family, not blood, not DNA, not shared last names or childhood homes. Family is who shows up when everything's falling apart. Family is who fights for you even when it costs them something. Family is who keeps promises, who tells the truth, who chooses loyalty over convenience. Ethan chose money. Svetlana chose money. Harlan chose money. And they all ended up with nothing. Ethan's in prison, 4 years into his 12-year sentence. I hear through the grapevine that he's found religion, that he spends his time reading and going to chapel and writing letters of apology to people who've never responded. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he hasn't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Svetlana disappeared into Monaco's expat community, spending what's left of the money she managed to hide. Last I heard, she was married to some cryptocurrency bro. Good luck to her. She'll need it. Harlan lost his license to practice law, turned state's evidence against Davidson in exchange for avoiding jail time himself. Now he works in insurance or something equally boring. I don't keep track. And Davidson? 2 years in federal prison for wire fraud and obstruction. Got out 6 months ago. I don't think about him at all. As for me, I run Dad's business now, the legitimate way, the way he always did, treating employees fairly, building relationships with suppliers, making sure the products are good quality and the prices are honest. It's smaller than it was under Ethan's management, but it's healthier, sustainable, something I can be proud of. I kept the diner job for 6 months after everything settled, even though I didn't need the money. Tony couldn't believe it when I told him who I really was, offered to make me a partner. I declined, but helped him expand to 2 more locations and set up a profit-sharing plan for the staff. Because good work should be rewarded, because people who show up deserve to be valued. The studio apartment in Jersey City? I kept it. Rented out now to a nursing student for below market rate. She reminds me of Maria, working 2 jobs, supporting her family, trying to build something better. Every month when she apologizes for being a day late with rent, I tell her the same thing. Pay when you can. The important thing is finishing school. Because I remember what it's like to be that person, the one nobody bets on, the one everyone dismisses. I'll never forget. So let me ask you something, because I bet some of you watching this have been through something similar. Maybe not $50 million. Most of us aren't that lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. But family betrayal? That's universal. So tell me in the comments, what's the worst thing a family member ever tried to take from you? Was it money, property, reputation, trust? And more importantly, did you fight back? Did you let them win? Did you find your own Maria, your own hidden witness, your own patient path to justice? Because here's what I learned through all of this, and it's the most important thing I can share with you. Justice is real. It doesn't always come quickly. It doesn't always look the way you expect. Sometimes it takes 18 months of serving coffee while your brother parties with stolen money. Sometimes it takes eating cheap Chinese takeout while building your case one document at a time. Sometimes it takes becoming invisible so you can see everything, but it comes. The truth always comes out, eventually, if you're patient enough, if you're smart enough, if you're willing to play the long game instead of the satisfying right now game. Ethan thought his laugh in that courtroom was the end of the story, the victory lap, the final, I won, you lost. But he forgot that the best stories have twist endings, and he was so busy celebrating that he never saw Maria coming. So if you're out there right now, feeling beaten, feeling like someone took what was yours and got away with it, I want you to know something. They didn't win. Not yet. Not until you stop fighting. And if you fight smart, if you fight patient, if you fight with truth on your side, you'll win. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually. If this story gave you hope, if it made you think about your own situation differently, if it reminded you that good people can win and bad people can lose, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because these stories matter. Because knowing we're not alone in our battles matters. Because sometimes, just sometimes, hearing about someone else's victory gives us the strength to keep fighting for our own. And if you've got your own story of justice, of revenge done right, of patience paying off, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. We're building a community here of people who understand that family isn't blood, it's loyalty. That money isn't power, truth is. That sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to quit. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, if you're in the middle of your fight right now, if you're sitting in your own Jersey City apartment eating cheap takeout and building your case, keep going. Document everything. Find your Maria. Be patient. Because somewhere out there, your brother is getting comfortable, getting sloppy, getting convinced he's won. And that's exactly when you strike. Thanks for watching. I'm Elena Russo, and I'm living proof that justice isn't just a word, it's a promise, if you're willing to work for it.